Gamers, what's good? Master Duel Central. We haven't done one of these in a while, and I'm kind of at a loss for content. So we're going to be doing a staples tier list. These are always fun to do. I don't do them very often, but I do feel like this format is kind of cementing itself, and I think it's going to be a pretty long format. Now, sometimes we get pretty big ban lists after the Duelist Cup, but to be honest, I really don't think we're going to get massive hits to either Cash or Pearly in this upcoming ban list. They're maybe going to slap them on the wrist, but overall, I think the format is going to look pretty similar for at least another month or two. So I think it's a pretty good time to do a staples tier list. It did change very significantly since the last time we did a staples tier list. Now you can see up here, we do have a thrust targets tier. This is not really a tier. It's just because I think thrust targets are pretty hard to rate right now. The targets for your thrust that you're going to be running in your deck are usually going to be cards that help you in a matchup that your deck is specifically bad at or stuff like that. So because of that, I feel like it's kind of hard to even rate them. So a lot of staples are going to be going into the thrust targets. I'll just do it right now. Yeah. Thrust is S tier, in my opinion. I mean, everyone's running Thrust, and there's a good reason for it. This card is insane. If you're going first and your opponent, you know, activates a hand trap or something, at least you get to set like an Imperm from your deck, which is an extra negate on their turn, which is like nothing to scoff at. And then if they activate a monster effect on your turn and you're going second, Thrust is even more crazy. You can get the specific board breaker you need, or you can get something like a triple tactics talent. Talent is really, really crazy, actually. So, yeah. Thrust up here, and I guess I'm just gonna put all the thrust targets up here while we're at it. So like there's a lot of good ones, and we can talk about them all individually here, but I'm just gonna I'm not gonna throw every single thrust target in here, but every card that you would probably just run at one as a thrust target, we're gonna throw up here. So you know, Dark Ruler No More, Dark Hole, Harpy's Feather Duster, Triple Tactics Talent, Lightning Storm. I don't have Raigeki in here, but like Dark Hole and Raigeki kind of go in the same category. It just depends on the deck if you'd rather run a Dark Hole or a Raigeki. I mean, these are all really, really good thrust targets, and I think it just kind of depends on your deck. For instance, like Lightning Storm is a really good one if you like just having that kind of like versatility. If you don't really want to run both like a Raigeki or a Dark Hole and a Harpy's Feather Duster, you can run a Lightning Storm, and it does the job of a Feather Duster pretty much all the time, and it can do the job of a Raigeki if your opponent doesn't play around it. But honestly, I think most people should be playing around it. I know for a fact a lot of Cash players are not playing around Lightning Storm right now, so this is definitely not a bad target. If you have a bit more space and you're like, or you're playing a going second deck and you don't mind running the like a bunch of board breakers, then I definitely would rather just have a Harpy's Feather Duster and like a Raigeki or Dark Hole in there, just because like, you know, you can search one with Thrust, and then if you get both, well, you know, there's more utility, and also because being able to get rid of all the monsters is pretty important. It kind of sucks that if your opponent puts all their monsters in defense position, they're playing Cash, all you're going to be popping with this is like a Birth and a Big Bang at best, you know, which is not terrible. But yeah, so I would definitely say like I like these two more, but this is not really an order of quality. As for Dark Ruler No More, I'm kind of mixed on this one. I mean, it's good against Cash, so I know why people would run one, and that's kind of the thing. That's why these are hard to rate, because you don't have to go get this card with your Thrust if you don't need it, you know? So like if you're playing against Pearly, you might want to go get a Triple Tactics Talent. It's very hand dependent, it's very matchup dependent. That's why like I didn't really feel comfortable even putting these on the tier list. I just kind of figured, you know, we'll just put like the generic cards that people often will search with their Thrust up here. Thrust is obviously S tier because everyone's running it, and they're running it for good reason. This card is super annoying, and it's kind of hard to play around it too. Like other than just straight up going like, I'm not going to activate a monster effect this turn, it's pretty hard to play around it. Like you're not going to stop yourself from activating a hand trap just for your opponent not to Thrust, unless like you're really down bad, you know? Next up here, let's just do another S tier. I think that would be pretty smart. I think it goes without saying, Imperm. This is like a really good thrust target as well, but I'm not putting it in thrust targets because unlike these, you won't just be like running one Imperm just to search off of Thrust. You're likely to be running 2 to 3 Imperm because it's such a good hand trap. Going first, going second. It's a very important card to be able to cross out as well. It stops the Arise Heart if you need to like use your graveyard and you're going second. Like it's one of your many outs to Arise Heart. And against Pearly, obviously it doesn't stop the Noir once the Noir hits the field, but you can use it to stop a Plump so that they can't set up the Noir properly, or that they have to waste more resources to do it. So it's definitely not a bad card by any means. I definitely think it's S tier, absolutely. It's like everyone's running it, and for good reason, right? Like for these like staple tier lists, a lot of the time if everyone's running it, it's for good reason. So we're just gonna deal with all of these, you know, the bingo slots. You know, we've got the Maxi and the Ash. The Ash is pretty much here because of this card. I think more people would be running Droll over Ash right now if it wasn't for Maxi. It's not just the fact that people want to negate Maxi, but it's the fact that they don't want to negate their own Maxi with Droll, right? So like Ash is just still an amazing card, obviously. And sure, it doesn't really win matchups anymore. Like using one Ash won't necessarily win you a game most of the time, but sometimes it does still win you a game. It's still an incredible card. It has applications in every matchup. It wins against Labyrinth, and Labyrinth is, in my opinion, a top tier deck. So I think it goes without saying that Ash is still just a S tier amazing hand trap. As for Maxi, well, it's Maxi, right? Like Kashtira just like hates Maxi, Pearly hates Maxi. Like Maxi is just crazy. Maxi's amazing. So definitely I think Maxi obviously goes without saying it's S tier. Love talking about how this card is so good. Like I mean, I know it's crazy, but yeah, so I would say this is basically the top end of the list. I don't think we're going to be adding anything else to S tier, but as you guys know, I like doing the top cards of a tier list first, and then we just kind of move around for the rest. All right, and next up, let's do a card that I think is definitely A tier right now, and that would be Nibiru. Nibiru, I really like running one copy of Nibiru or one or two copies of Nibiru in pretty much any deck right now, just because like when your opponent decides to take the Maxi challenge a little bit, just the fact that they're threatened by the idea that you might draw into Nibiru is really crazy. Nibiru is pretty game winning against a lot of decks right now. Against Pearly, it's like it depends, because if they get to their Noir, you know, Nibiru's not going to be doing that much. Also, if you like remove their XCs from the field while they have their continuous spell, that's going to spell doom for you. And there's a lot of like non-top tier decks that run around in ladder that are also like pretty weak to Nibiru. So it really depends on the matchup, of course, but generally speaking, Nibiru's been pretty good to me. Another card that I think is really, really solid, even though it's a bit limited in its matchups, would be Red Reboot. In the same way that Nibiru just kind of clears cache, I think Red Reboot just totally clears Labyrinth. And clearing Labyrinth is really good right now because Labyrinth is just like super overrepresented, or it's accurately represented. That deck is crazy. Labyrinth is everywhere. It's really strong, in my opinion, top tier. And having a card that just shuts it off and lets you just win the game for free is pretty damn crazy. Red Reboot also has some application for other matchups. For instance, if your opponent is setting up the Pearly Eep or Pearly Yeep. I don't even know how to pronounce that card, but you know, the Pearly Trap card. Well, negating that is actually pretty huge. If they didn't go into their Noir and they were trying to get greedy with the draws, you can stop them from getting into Noir, and suddenly that Pearly field looks absolutely abysmal. Also, you know, this can be pretty good against cash because oftentimes I'll be setting up the Big Bang, which is a really crazy trap card, and being able to just negate that outright is crazy. It's even good in a lot of random situations where you just like need to stop an imperm. So like I've seen this card be really good. I know this card is game winning against Labyrinth, and that's reason enough to have it in here, honestly, because Labyrinth is everywhere. It's top tier, super popular deck. So you're getting a bunch of free wins off this card. I think he goes without saying that it's at least A tier right now. Next up, let's do Kaijus. Now I think Kaijus, it kind of goes without saying that they're A tier right now. It's just kind of a format where you need to draw the out. Unfortunately, the top tier decks are pretty varied. Well, at least one of them is very varied from the others, with Labyrinth just not really caring about all the like Kashtira and Pearly outs. Thankfully, Kaijus do have crossover in that they out the Arise Heart, which is really good, and they also out the Pearly Noir, which is really important. So being able to out both of those monsters with a Kaiju is really good. Kaijus are kind of like, if your deck can't run Lava Golem, you know, if you need your normal summon, you're going to run Kaijus instead, especially if you're playing a go in second strategy. And, you know, they're just really good. Oftentimes, just outing one card is really all you need. Even when you're playing against fringe matchups like Sword Soul, or just some, you know, some weirdo decks like I don't know, like a Mathmech Jump Scare or something like that, having that one Kaiju can really help you to just like get rid of one negate on the field that might really like open up your plays. So definitely I think Kaijus are just really, really good right now because it is like a kind of a draw the out format, which makes Kaijus just like very, very solid. Next up, let's do like, you know, the weirdo Kaiju. We're gonna do the Sphere mode. I think Sphere mode is like pretty much a lot worse than Kaijus. Not like a bad card, obviously, because when you do get the Sphere mode effect, like when you have 3 monsters on the field to tribute, this is like the best card ever. It's just so busted that it's not even funny. Similar to Lava Golem, you don't get your normal summon when you use this one, because I think this card uses up your normal summon, if I recall. And yeah, I mean, fair enough. You're tributing 3 monsters, which is insane. My problem with this card is a lot of the time, if you're like facing Pearly will only set up 2 monsters. So you have this insane card and you want to out the Pearly Noir, and you just can't because you need to tribute 3. So because of that, I'm not a massive fan of this card, and obviously you only run this in decks that don't need their normal summon. On the other hand, I think if you're going to play a card like this, you might as well play the Lava Golem, and I kind of baited you there. I actually think Lava Golem is S tier right now. I mean, this is just a game-winning card in this format against most decks, pretty much. It'll completely obliterate Pearly. Even if Pearly gets to add like all their spells from the grave to their hand, if they have their continuous spell in the back row, you're just going for game at this point, right? Because there's really only one deck that's running this card, and it's Mikanko. I mean, obviously you can run this card in pretty much any deck that doesn't need their normal summon, and it's going to be a game-winning card. The thing is, Mikanko is just gonna go like just smash into it on turn 2 and just win the game instantly. If you're playing Mikanko and you're facing Cash or Pearly and you see Lava Golem in your hand, you're just like, this is gonna be a joke, right? I play Scareclaw Cash, a going second variant of Scareclaw Cash right now. I think low-key that deck is tier 1. I know that a lot of people think I'm coping for that. I really do think that deck is tier 1 right now and just slipping under the radar. No one's noticing how busted it is. But I can't run this card because we need our normal summon in Scareclaw. I wish I didn't need my normal summon because this is just such a crazy card right now. It's just such a game-winning card. So yeah, Lava Golem, in my opinion, S tier. It's the best Kaiju if you can afford to lose your normal summon. Whereas this is like a more, you know, it's a Kaiju, it's generalized. You can use it in pretty much any deck because it doesn't cost you your normal summon. Another cool thing is if you draw multiples, you get to special summon 1 to your own field as like for a link material or as a beater or something. So yeah, Kaijus are still really, really solid. I just think Lava Golem, if you can run it, is a lot better. I think Gamma's like A tier. The thing about Gamma that makes it so good, if your deck like runs synchro monsters, this card is crazy because you'll get a synchro turn 1 for free. Why? Because everyone is just like shotgunning Maxi right now. People want to shotgun Maxi to get the 1 draw if your opponent is playing Kashtira. I don't really believe in that philosophy. I think just let your opponent summon their first Kashtira, like just wait it out. I think it's so silly that people will shotgun their Maxi in the standby phase, but a lot of people in my chat tell me to do it. They tell me that's what they're doing, so I'm just going to assume, and I've seen it in ladder a lot too, I'm just going to assume a lot of people are doing this. I really don't think it's optimal. I get that like Gamma is not that popular, but the thing is, if Gamma resolves, it's such a game-winning card, especially in a synchro deck. Like if you're playing Punk and like your opponent maxis at the start of the turn and you get to Gamma, it's like, it's just silly how crazy this goes. And honestly, I think if you're playing against Cash and you have Maxi in hand, you don't know you're playing against Cash yet, just wait. If they special summon their first Kashtira, just wait until they commit to a special summon. You know, if they activate Rise Heart or if they activate Theosis, chain Maxi, there you go. You'll get your draws and you're safe from Gamma at least. There's also the fact that Labyrinth is super popular, so shotgunning Maxi in the draw phase, then your opponent sets 5 and passes, like that's pretty silly. So please stop shotgunning Maxi, but until people stop shotgunning their Maxi in the standby or draw phase, I think Gamma's just really good. It's just in a good spot. You're going to get free Synchro 8s at the start of your turn every time someone shotguns Maxi. And there's other scenarios, obviously, where this card is really good. If they try to Ash your Thrust, for example, and you have Gamma, that's also super crazy. Just anytime you get access to a free Synchro, even if you just make like the actual Cyframe Gear Omega Synchro, I think that's what it's called, and just get to hand loop your opponent for 1 card next turn, like that's insane. That's insane. You get a negate, you get a pop, you get a body, you get a hand loop. Like, it's just crazy. Next up, we're going to do Droll. I think Droll, honestly, I was thinking top of A tier, but the more I think about it, man, in the current format, Droll is just insane. The reason I wanted to put it A tier is because I feel like against Labyrinth, it's not that good. Droll is nice in the sense that it can stop Maxi. It's an extra way to stop Maxi other than Ash. But it will stop you also from adding cards to your hand. Like, keep in mind, it's a 2-sided floodgate, right? So sometimes you might not even want to Droll yourself, which is another reason I'm like, sometimes I'm iffy on Droll. But it is completely game-winning against Pearly. It is arguably, depending on the hand, of course, it's pretty much game-winning against Kashtira as well. So I could definitely see an argument to say that Droll is, it's probably S tier. It'd probably be silly for me not to put it in S tier in this current format. Yeah, I think A was a little bit crazy. I actually think this card is S tier. I think that would be fair. Droll is a bit too much of a game-winning card right now. Even against like Labyrinth, it's not that bad just because you can stop the Max C. It doesn't do that much against Labyrinth. But like Labyrinth, once they activate Max C, is even scarier. So getting to Droll their Max C, it could help, you know? So, I don't know. It's good. It's just so insane. Against Labyrinth, not so much. So I'm going to put it like at the bottom of S tier, but it's still like a crazy card. Definitely like an amazing game-winning card. Next up, we're going to do Lancia. I think Lancia is kind of a copium card. I'm going to put this one, maybe not in C. I'll put it like in B. I'll put it in B, probably under the sphere mode. It does win the matchup against Kashtira. I don't think it does much of anything else though. Like, it doesn't really stop Pearly, doesn't really stop Labyrinth. Like, it doesn't stop much of the like most popular decks. So like, even though I've seen some people run this as like Kashtira hate, I think it's a little bit extra. Honestly, I wouldn't run this just to hate on Kashtira. Like, there's better ways to hate on Kashtira. Honestly, like as much as Lancia is really good, like why not just run Droll at that point? Like, Droll hates on Kashtira just as much. So yeah, I don't know about Lancia. I think it's kind of a whack take. Next up, let's do Book of Eclipse. I think Book of Eclipse, maybe bottom of A? Book of Eclipse is cool, and you know, we can even probably include like Book of Moon in here. Just book effects in general are just really, really solid right now. If you're going first, Book of Eclipse is kind of game winning even against Pearly, because you can use it at an appropriate time where your opponent has already wasted a bunch of their like hand size to try to like pump up their plump or something like that, or just make like big XCs, and you just flip everything face down. They don't really have a good response to it in their turn, so this is a really good way to stop your opponent from extending with their Pearlies. It also does not remove them from the field, so it will not trigger their back row or their field spell. If they get to their Pearly trap though, you know, you have to be very careful with your timing to make sure that their Noir next turn is not unaffected. Still, I do think this is a really good card, despite the fact that it gives your opponent draws. If you're going first and you set this card, it can be really, really helpful if you don't have enough interruption, or, you know, because Pearly can extend like kind of crazy. And obviously the main reason we're putting this on the tier list in the first place is because it just wins the game against Cash. If you're going second and you draw Eclipse, you just go like Eclipse and then like clear everything. You just deal with everything for free. You know, so yeah, this card is, I just think it's really solid right now. I wouldn't like say it's the best thing ever. I don't think every single deck should run it. Also, it's a flash spell, so it can't be searched with Thrust, which like makes me sad. So, you know, I'm gonna put it at the bottom of A. I still think it's a really good card though. Next up, let's do D Shifter. Shifter is probably in a similar spot to, yeah, I'm gonna put Shifter like higher up here. It's kind of in a similar spot to Lancia. It's almost like the opposite of the reason that I'm putting Lancia in B tier, because it's completely useless in the Kashtira matchup, which is like a really, really, really popular deck right now. Like, I think it's the most popular deck, at least from my experience. I got to DLV Max and I got to Master 1, and I would say the deck I face the most is Kashtira, so I don't see really why you would want to run this, although it is game winning against every other deck. If it's inconsequential in the mirror match, but it's game winning against like other matchups, it stops Pearly from using the like graveyard of, well, not the graveyard effect, but the Per Lily's effect of using a spell in the grave. It completely stops that. So like, definitely Shifter is still really, really solid. I don't really see how I could put it any lower than this. I just don't think it's that great right now that you would want to run it, just because oftentimes it'll be kind of a dead draw in the mirror match. So yeah, I'm putting it at B tier, but I can totally respect people that do run it. I totally get why you would, just because like outside of the mirror match, this card is pretty crazy. Although against Labyrinth, it's also not that big a deal. Even some Labyrinth players used to play D-Shifter, and Labyrinth is super popular too. So that kind of goes like to lower its score a little bit, and that's why it's in B tier, even though it's like one of the most insane hand traps of all time. Next up, we're going to do Ghost Bell. I think Ghost Bell also probably fits neatly in B tier, probably above, you know, like I think it's a pretty good B tier. I know like the graveyard is not the most important thing ever right now, but Ghost Bell will stop the Pearl Lily, which is a pretty big deal. And there's other things it'll do too. It can stop a Cult by the Grave, which is also a really big deal. So I've seen some people run a one-of Ghost Bell, and I respect it. I definitely think it makes sense. It's not the best hand trap of the format. It's not very great against Kashtira, honestly, but it can be quite good against Labyrinth, and it's very good against Pearly. So I'll put it in B tier. I think that's a fair spot for it. Evenly matched. I don't think evenly matched is that great, but it is searchable with Thrust when you need it. It is searchable with Thrust when you need it, but it's evenly matched in a format where you want to get rid of one card. It's almost always just one card you want to get rid of, and that's the one card that evenly matched will not get rid of. So I'm going to put it at a high B tier, maybe like under Shifter, I would say. You know, it's still a good card. It'll do a lot of work for you. There's definitely scenarios where you're going to want to search in evenly with your Thrust if you're running it. Personally, I wouldn't run evenly right now because I hate that it's not going to out the X-Pearly Noir. It's not going to out the Arise Heart, which are the cards I want to out. But there are scenarios where just outing everything else allows you to just deal with that one thing, and that could be nice. So I still think Evenly's a crazy card. I don't think you can really sleep on Evenly ever. You still get that battle phase jump scare sometimes, even in this format. You can't sleep on that. So I'm going to put it in the B tier. Next up, let's do DD Crow. That's a C tier card. I mean, again, it can be pretty good in the Pearly matchup because DD Crow doesn't need to banish a monster from the grave. So, you know, when they go Pearl Lily effect, you can target their target and just banish it so they don't get the Pearl Lily effect. So DD Crow is nice for that, but overall, it just doesn't come up very much, especially in a format with a Rise Heart, obviously. I'm putting it C because it's not bad. It's not bad. And we're just going to skip the D category, go straight to F tier. And F tier is going to be, obviously, Dogwood. I mean, Spooky Dogwood is just, like, dog shit. This card is just a life point gainer. Like, I don't even understand why this card exists. This card sucks. I'm putting it here. It's not even a staple. I'm just putting it here because it's funny. But yeah, Dogwood is dog shit. We're going to do... Oh, Kurikara. I think Kurikara is really good. I would put Kurikara probably at the bottom of A. Yeah, I'm going to put Kurikara at the bottom of A. I do think this card is a little bit overrated. Just because, like, I get that people are like, oh, you know, you can use it to out the X Pearly Noir. And that's if your opponent isn't patient. So if your opponent's patient, this is not going to be doing anything to that X Pearly Noir. One of my main issues with this card is that to really get full like value from this card, you kind of have to waste resources to make your opponent activate a bunch of monster effects so that then you can tribute their shit. And sure, it'll be a huge body and maybe even go for game. But like, not necessarily. It really depends on the game. I'm not a huge believer in this card. I know a lot of people are like super sold on this card and huge believers in this card. I get why people like it, and I get that it's really good. I don't want to sleep on it. I'm still putting it A tier. I know it's very good. I just don't think it's quite as good as like just running a Kaiju. That like when you have a Kaiju in hand, you know for a fact that you can out the card you want to out. You know, and you don't have to put any more resources into that. You can use the rest of your hand. So I hate that with Kurikara. You kind of have to go like, okay, I have 5 cards in my hand. I can waste these 2 cards to force out these 2 cards on my opponent's field to lose another card in my hand to summon the Kurikara. Then I'm left with 2 cards to play, you know? Well, I guess 3 because you're going second. But anyway, at the end of the day, I still think it's a really good card. I'm not going to sleep on it. That's just my take though. Let me know in the comments if you're a Kurikara believer. I know there's a lot of believers out there. Next up, let's do Moonlit Chill. I think this card is actually quite good right now. I've been seeing it quite a bit. Basically, this card is kind of similar to Effect Veiler, except like it's only if your opponent special summons a monster, so it's only in response to a special summon, and you can only target that monster that was special summoned, and you negate its effects. And then I think when that monster leaves the field, your opponent takes burn damage equal to that monster's attack. It's not the best card in the world, you know, but I do think it's actually quite a solid card overall, especially since like a lot of the time people right now are special summoning on your turn. The one thing I don't like about it is like, sure, you can use it on your turn, but the odds of that happening are not super high. It ends up being pretty similar to Veiler, except worst. So in my opinion, probably not an A tier card, probably like a high B tier. You know, I'll put Ghost Mourner, probably above Evenly. Yeah, I think it's a really good card. I'm not gonna like say it's not good. I just think it's a worse Veiler. And speaking of Veiler, I think Veiler is A tier. Veiler definitely A tier, maybe even over Kurt. No. Yeah. Veiler's just like a crazy card because it's not once per turn. So if your opponent's taking a maxi challenge and you draw into Veiler, you get to negate their stuff. And obviously, unlike Moonlit Chill, you are not restricted to only specifically what they just summoned. You can just target a monster on the field and negate it. It's very generic in that sense. And unlike Imperm, you can draw it while you have cards on the field. So if you're playing a deck like where, you know, you're doing a lot of drawing or you have like a field spell in your deck, so like you don't get to use Imperm from your hand, it might be better to have like 1 or 2 Veilers in there, just like as a hand trap that you can use from your hand if your opponent's taking a maxi challenge, or if your deck just draws a lot and stuff like that. So overall, I would definitely say Veiler is quite good right now. I know Pearly likes to run Veiler quite a bit, probably because it's a level 1, so they can even use it as a material in fringe scenarios, although that probably never happens. But yeah, so I feel like A tier is just fair for Veiler. And we're going to end it off with this card here. A lot of people have been coping about this one. A whole lot of people, every format, they always cope about this card. This card sucks. It's not F tier, but Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. Man, you guys got to stop coping about this card. I guess it is better than DD Crow, though, but Okay, to be fair, in the Pearly matchup, sure. If you get rid of the Noir, Pearly doesn't have like a super good way of getting back their ex-Pearly Noir. So in the Pearly matchup, I guess this is like a really great card. It's just that in every other matchup, this card is ass, dude. It is garbage. I can't like... I actually got my Arise Heart banished quite a few times when I was playing Kashtira. And like the thing is, I can just banish a Kashtiosis and grab my Arise Heart that is banished and just put it back in my extra deck, you know? I can just do that. I could just put it back. And that's what I did. So, because it does not banish them face down. It banishes your Arise Hearts face up. They all get banished from your extra deck face up. So it doesn't out the Arise Heart in any way. It doesn't stop me from using it at all. It just forces me to banish a Kashtiosis from my deck in order to get the Arise Heart back into my extra. Just like a small inconvenience. Against Labyrinth, it's literally useless. Against Sprite, it has like fringe uses, but oftentimes Sprite can still play. Like against a lot of matchups, it just kind of does something, but not really much of anything. It's just kind of like there. So yeah, I'm going to put it here. I mean, I get that people want this card to be good, but I don't think it's very good. Anyway, guys, I'd love to know your thoughts. I know this was a bit all over the place. Not scripted. I did have a written down list to help me guide me as I'm layering my thoughts here. But yeah, hopefully the video was not too crazy and I wasn't just yapping and saying some nonsense. Let me know in the comments if you guys agree with some of these takes. Let me know where you think I'm crazy. Do you think Valor is way better? Do you think Kurikara Divine Carnage should be in Divinity tier or something? Just let me know in the comments. Love to know your thoughts. Make sure to like the video too. That helps me a lot. And hit the subscribe button. Maybe we'll make it to 20,000 in March, my birthday. That would be cool. That would be cool. That would be that would be nice. All right, peace.